Okay, so I'm going to record this lecture today. So hi, good morning. I hope all of you having a beautiful beginning of the day. So today we have a speaker, a special speaker for this class, Professor Fayaz Bachi. He actually O'Brien Fellow at McGill Law School, but and also he was a visiting scholar at the Institute for the Study of International Development at McGill, but currently he is based in Ottawa. Particularly, he is a visiting professor at the School of International Development and Global Study at University of Ottawa. So today I'm still accepting students coming in, but anyway, we just move forward. So I would like to briefly introduce you, Professor Fayaz and Fayaz Bachi. After that, we will move on to his lecture, and he will provide a lecture for us, and after that, toward the end, you can have question. And if you want to ask him question, you can use chat function to put your question, but also you can raise your hand. Okay, but we try to concentrate your question in the toward the end of his lecture today. So we have about 158 students, so it looks good. So let's begin. So reason why I invite him to this class, because he can really speak about a practitioner's point of view. He worked as a he worked as a senior advisor for the United Nations Development Program in Pakistan, and he also now currently teaching in Ottawa, but he has very rich experience directly working with a community and civil society actors. And today's topic is civil society engagement. I have assigned for his article related to civil society engagement and aid effectiveness. And you see, I prepared the slide just to show you that this one, I just want to move this one. Oops. But I can, sorry, something wrong. Okay, so he has numerous publications related to development, but recent ones I found really important. One is better spending for localizing global sustainable development goals. So I think he has really interesting themes related to human-centered approach. We talked about human development, particularly Amartya Sen's idea about development as freedom, and I believe Professor Bachi's ideas related to development really grounded on this people-centered approach, human-centered approach. And he will discuss also the importance of participatory development. We can ask what does it mean, participatory development. He's really speaking about the significance of inclusion of local community, aid effectiveness, local needs. These are all related, interrelated, I think, theme of human-centered approach and participatory inclusion of local voices. And the ultimate goal here is a social transformation that Professor Bachi is seeking, and I think he will clarify in his lecture today. And the last keyword I put is the art and science of linking with other. So I think we should ask about the question of the other, and also the interconnection between arts and science. So I'm going to show his slide. He kindly provided his slide. Let me see. So, okay, so I'm going to, here you go, his slide. Okay, am I showing I'm showing you a slide, right? Okay. So please welcome Professor Fayaz Batio. Thank you. Fayaz, I think you're muted.
Good morning, everyone. I muted myself because I thought you were talking. It's so nice to meet all of you. Thank you so much. Good morning again. Before I speak about the subject, I want to say something about my background. Well, at this point, I am not with the School of International Development and Global Studies. My contact with them ended, although my interaction with them continues. But my interest in the subject is because I have been engaged as a development practitioner with the communities at grassroots level for more than 30 years. And my writings are based on that. Whatever I have written, it comes from the insights I gained in the field. To begin the subject, to talk briefly about civil society and its significance, I can sum it up in two sentences. One, which is most important, whether you are doing development work or not, is seeing the other as a source of hope, not fear. That is what is participatory development, that is what is inclusion, that is what is civil society. And coming in specific to development work among the low-income communities, we say that using private resources to achieve public goals. Use of private means to achieve public goals, that is civil society. So if you know these things, you know what civil society is. To make it very simple. If you carry it away with you, I think the purpose of today's talk is met. Now, coming back to my interest, I want to say something about where I am coming from. I was very lucky or fortunate to have worked with some very outstanding poverty alleviation programs in the world. If you know about, have some idea of the global map, which is now divided between global north and global south. Global south is used for what was previously known as the third world. Before the collapse of Soviet Union, the world was divided into three worlds. First world was market economies, developed democracies in the West. Second world was socialist bloc, Soviet Union and other socialist countries. And other countries which lagged behind were known as the third world. And before the end of the World War II, they were known as colonies. And the modern developed Western world was known as colonizers. So that after the freedom of colonies, that terminology changed and we had first world, second world, and third world. And after the collapse of Soviet Union, then we changed it to global north and global south. So the contemporary interest in civil society emerged because global north was not able to solve some of the problems it thought it could easily solve in global south. So we'll be talking of civil society with reference to global south. And I want to add one more thing. Global south doesn't have to be geographically in the global south. Australia is in southern part of the map, but it's a part of global north. And First Nation communities are based in Canada and USA, but they're part of global south, in my views. So, but we have used these terms, global north and global south, to refer to, say, haves and have-nots and other terminology. So, in the if you look at the globe, you will see that there are two regions with largest number of the poor, with concentration of the poor. One is South Asia, and other is Sub-Saharan Africa. So my inspiration came from the experiments which took place in South Asia. Starting in 1982, a program was started in northern areas of Pakistan, which consists of most inaccessible mountain ranges in the world: Himalayas, Hindu Kush, and Karakoram Mountains. Where these areas meet, that was a program area of Aga Khan Rural Support Program. The program was started by Aga Khan Development Network. It was led by Mr. Shoaib Sultan Khan, who has been my teacher and mentor since then. And what he did was miraculous. In 10 years, he doubled the income of 100,000 families in those areas. It is unlike any other development assistance program anywhere else in the world. So for me, I was associated with that program. I worked with them for some time. So it intrigued me. I wanted to understand what is different in this program. And the thinker, the brain behind the program was Akhtar Hamid Khan. He had many distinctions to his contribution to the cause of poverty alleviation. The first one started during the Second World War, when an area known as Bengal in British India, about which Amartya Sen has written a lot, and which was Amartya Sen's, I think, also cause of engagement with poverty alleviation. And then he wrote about access and other things. 1 million people died because of famine. And this famine was not caused by nature, it was caused by the administrative decisions of the British government to hold the grain during the war. And Akhtar Hamid Khan was assistant commissioner in Kumilla district. And in his district, no one died because of the famine, because disobeying the verbal orders of his seniors, he opened the warehouses and he distributed grain to the poor. So this gives us a very interesting perspective. One is that civil society becomes important. Seeing others as xenophobe becomes important when there is public policy failure. So that is one thing. Civil society addresses inclusion or participation. It addresses the concerns created by public policy failure. I will talk more about public policy failure also. Then Akhtar Hamid Khan, after separation of East Pakistan from West Pakistan in 1971, when Bangladesh got freedom, he moved to what is now current Pakistan, and he was the brain behind Aga Khan Rural Support Program. He started a program there. And then he started one program. This program, as I already told you, it doubled the income of all the families. And it is very simple. I will tell you how could it easily be assessed if the income was doubled or not. And third thing he did was, in one of the largest informal settlements in Pakistan, we call them slums also, and squatter settlements, he introduced a sanitation program, and on self-help basis, people laid sewage line in 7,000 lanes. So he broke this myth of poor being equated with destitutes. He said poor have the resources, they have the will to change their lives, and they can if they are provided proper social and technical guidance. So if you fail in helping the poor, it is your failure, it is not their failure. So that again depends, because civil society is something very, very diverse. So he showed that it is not only being a part of civil society that you succeed, it is how you interact with the people. What do you expect from them? And his cardinal principle again was this, you must have heard it so many times from Schumacher to now so many thinkers that teach a person how to fish, not give him or her the fish. But he showed in practice what does it mean. So this is the background. This was my inspiration. This is where I learned as a child, what poverty alleviation is, what participatory development practice is. And the fourth, and one of the most interesting and very well ignored event in all the development studies programs is that once Shoaib Sultan Khan, General Manager of Aga Khan Rural Support Program, succeeded in northern areas of Pakistan, he was recognized by Ramon Magsaysay Foundation, and he was given Ramon Magsaysay Award, which is considered Nobel Prize of Asia in recognition of his services. And before that, Akhtar Hamid Khan had done that. But his success led to so many other spin-offs. One, and the most interesting thing is that Prime Minister of Pakistan got to know that there's someone doing some useful work in Pakistan as well. And he received a phone call from the Prime Minister for the first time. And then he was approached by UNDP and later on the World Bank to start a South Asia poverty alleviation program, which covered Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, Nepal, Sri Lanka. And through this program, this was the first large-scale South-South poverty alleviation program, South-South cooperation. We have heard of this cooperation, but we don't know what it means. And the beauty of all their work is their principles are very, very simple. I will talk about them. But I want to mention, Shoaib Sultan Khan was asked to start the poverty alleviation program in Andhra Pradesh state of India. And when he was invited there, he went there and the chief secretary and chief minister met him. I also want to tell you that it was highly lauded by the government of India. Their Federal Minister of Rural Development said that this is the largest poverty alleviation program and the most successful that we have ever had. I had the honor of accompanying him also to those districts and talk to the people. So when he went there, they asked him, they said, Mr. Khan, we don't want you to tell us after 6 months that your program has not succeeded because we did not meet your preconditions. So tell us right in the beginning what conditions you want us to fulfill, so that if you fail, you don't blame us, blame the failure on us. And this is what I'm now quoting is, this is by the Chief Secretary of Andhra Pradesh, Kapula Raju. Kapula Raju, I heard him personally when he said this. He said, we asked Shoaib Sultan Khan, what are your conditions? He said, only 2 conditions. And they said, what are those conditions? He said, 1, the poor should be willing to alleviate poverty. And 2nd, they should be willing to organize. If they meet these 2 conditions, my program will succeed. So then they asked him the second question. They said, how large the program you want to have and how big area you want to start. He said, I will start only in 1 village. It was rural development program. And if it is strong enough, if it convincingly shows the poor that they can rise above poverty level, then it will spread. It will have snowball effect. I don't have to go and preach it everywhere. I don't have to go there with tons of money to attract the poor. If they know that I can help them, then it will spread. And that is what happened. And it is now the largest program in India. Not only Government of India, but Rahul Gandhi Foundation and so many other organizations. It's spread in more than 11 states of India, almost all over India. So that is the strength of the program. So aid effectiveness comes not with the money, not with the power of the experts, but with the power of the people. So now I want to explain something about what the approach is. The approach which was followed by Shoaib Sultan Khan and by Akhtar Hamid Khan. And by the way, Shoaib Sultan Khan, I have to give you a little bit background. In 1959, USAID gave some money and Ford Foundation to Government of Pakistan to start a poverty alleviation program in Pakistan. And Akhtar Hamid Khan was made director of the program in the then East Pakistan, which is now Bangladesh. And Akhtar Hamid Khan is now a household name in Bangladesh because he engaged rural communities. Like Professor Yunus, who started Grameen Bank, is one of the proteges of Akhtar Hamid Khan. He taught these people about microcredit, about engagement of women, about poverty alleviation, about participatory work. So he worked in Kumila district of East Pakistan, where he was during the British time when he resigned after he disobeyed the order of his seniors in the civil service. And he resigned. And this was the most prestigious service at that time in the world. And he became a locksmith. And people asked him, why have you become a locksmith? He said, I want to experience how the poor live. And I want to learn about the poverty firsthand. So he was given Ramon Magsaysay Award because of his successful program in East Pakistan. It was called Kumila program. So Akhtar Hamid Khan was of the view, let me summarize it in one word, which is not used in the literature, not used by development practitioners, and not used by development studies, which I think summarizes the whole practice of participatory development. Then I will talk about the specific methods used in northern areas of Pakistan, which these slides also talk about that, and the approach used by Akhtar Hamid Khan in one of the urban settlements, Orangi pilot project. So both these will give you very, very deep insights into poverty alleviation. And if I want to make one word summary, it would be the word humility. I think for a development professional, maybe many of you will become development professionals in the future. The most important thing is to be humble. It means knowing that people we are going to help know better than us what their condition is, what their limitations are, what their strengths are, and how they can overcome it. And our job is to understand the barriers coming in their way and to help them cross those barriers. And they're not necessarily financial barriers all the time. We have to know what is the role of money or finance and where does it come? And what is appropriate financial assistance? But we also need to know other things. So let me begin. Akhtar Hamid Khan's philosophy or key cardinal principles of working with the poor. I'm using my left hand to make signs because my right hand is not in a good position to. So, very, very interesting. Akhtar Hamid Khan's finding was that when you approach a poor community, your first job is to understand what are the barriers in their way. And because understanding these barriers will help you why public policy has failed and why market has failed, because the need for civil society arises due to market failure and public policy failure. Public policy failure, I have already told you. Market also fails because market solutions for helping the poor are so expensive that they are out of reach of the poor. So market cannot provide for them. And public policy can also not address their issues. And meaningful engagement with the communities helps you to deal with both the failures, dealing with high administrative cost of development and dealing with sacrificing the interest of the poor for the interest of the elites. These two failures. So he says when you go and you engage with the low-income communities, there are four kinds of barriers. One barrier is, and partly I think development professionals are also responsible for that, they think that poverty alleviation is not our responsibility, it is responsibility of the government. He called it psychological barrier. He said they can cross this barrier, they have the capacity to cross this barrier, but they have a feeling they can't do it. They need a patron. They need an outsider to help them. Which he said is not true. And very interestingly, he said, we should make distinction between the poor and the destitute. They are poor, but they're not destitute. Poor means if you come up with an affordable solution, they will accept it, they will own it, they will contribute, and then it will become financially sustainable for them also. To explain this point, let me give you an example. When he started his work in Orangi urban settlement in Pakistan, which is the largest informal settlement in Karachi, 1 million people. Karachi has a population of 20 million now, and 50% of those people live in informal settlement, the poor of the town, who are service providers, industrial workers, domestic help in all capacities. They run the town, and they live in these informal settlements. When he went there, his donor first asked him that I want you because you are a very talented man, very experienced man, and I want you to start a poverty alleviation program in Orangi. He said, fine. He said, I want you to start a state-of-the-art college in Orangi so that Orangi's youth, they can get the best education and they can beat poverty. He said, should I ask you how to alleviate poverty or should I ask the poor how to alleviate poverty? He said, I think I know. He said, if you know, then you run the program. Because I will ask the poor. Even if you establish a state-of-the-art college here, children of the rich will get admission and poor will still stay outside. They cannot afford it. So I have to begin where they are. So for 6 months, he was walking around. He was observing, talking to people on tea shops, in the lanes, in various areas. And he discovered that the main cause why people fall below the poverty line is because of the expenses on the treatment of the breadwinner in the family. If the breadwinner falls ill, then they have to borrow from the moneylender in the market, who at times give at 200%, they give the loan. So they have to sell assets, they have to borrow money, and that is the main cause of families falling below poverty line. Otherwise, they're very hardworking people. They work together as a family enterprise, and they earn enough. Although, I mean, they can rise and there can be increase in wages, but they are not below poverty line. And what is the main cause of this is most of them fall ill because of the waterborne diseases, either malaria or gastroenteritis or other things, because there is no clean drinking water available. And the second thing is the clean drinking water is not available because there is no proper sanitation system in there. The liquid waste that people dispose of, they dispose it off in the form of cesspools. So the water gathers there, and then it is breeding ground for mosquitoes. It seeps into the water table. It causes all those problems. So until and unless they have a sanitation system, they cannot rise above the poverty line. So he took 6 months, and then he thought, let me confirm this. He started talking to the communities, and they all agreed. He said, if you agree, are you willing to pay to lay the sanitation line, sewage line in your lane? They said, no, you do it. So this was the second test. He said, I will not do it. You will do it. It is your problem, and you have to pay for it. Now, this is very interesting. Most of us, development practitioners and development experts, if you ask them, they will interpret it, okay, we need $1 million, $2 million of UN or CEDA or Global Affairs Canada or USAID, these poor people, to help. Akhtar Amir Khan said no. And now I will explain the logic to you. He says, you will lay the first sewerage line. I will not lay the sewerage line. It is important because if people are not willing to pay, it means this is not their priority. And they will be willing to do anything that you give money for. If you want them to open school and give money, they will say, yes, we want it. So this is, if you are giving money, is not the real confirmation of their priority. The confirmation is, now you will say, no, poor cannot pay. So let me explain. Akhtar Amir Khan's logic was the first is psychological barrier. Second barrier is social barrier. People don't, even in communities, they don't trust one another. And they don't trust the outsider. They don't trust the government. White collar people like the government development and professionals who go there, most of the time they go there to exploit them for one reason or the other. So there's a very low level of trust. So he said, second barrier is social barrier. And any outsider who wants to engage in participatory development should know the recipe, should be able to alleviate this trust deficit. Third barrier, he said, is financial barrier, because the solutions we offer are beyond the reach of the poor. And we interpret it as saying that poor cannot afford, they're not willing to pay, they're destitute. That is not true. It is our failure, we don't have appropriate solutions for them financially. That is the third barrier. And the other is that where credit can help them, we are trying to give them handouts. That's also. So he said there is psychological barrier, social barrier, and financial barrier, and technical barrier also. We cannot develop appropriate financial solution because we don't have appropriate technical solution. So now let me explain this with reference to Orangi. And then I will go to northern areas, and these two cases should be able to very well summarize the participatory development approach, which had enormous success in South Asia, one of the largest poverty-stricken area in the world. So what he did was, at the lane level, the question was how to build trust. What Orangi pilot project did was, if you want to lay the sewage line on in such a large settlement, you need to have a map and you need to have a gradient survey to know which way the slope is going. So community needs to know exactly, because 7,000 lanes are to be connected. So it must be meticulously done. You map the area, they exactly know what should be the level of the sewage line when it begins and where it ends. So you need to have a level survey. You need to have map. So he did that. So that was to show the community that this is what you don't have and what will contribute. And if you lay the sewage line in your lane, it will be, say, in Pakistani terms, 5,000 rupees, which would be, say, $200. And if there are 20 families, it will come to $10 for each family. And if you compare this cost with the amount of money you pay for treatment, which pushes you below the poverty line, which is 10 times greater than the amount you will pay for the sewage line. So that was the mathematics or arithmetic, whatever you call it. He said, he went and told the people that if you pay so much on your treatment, why are you not willing to pay on sanitation? But here, a very other important insight, and this slide which is highlighted now is very appropriate for what I'm going to say. It's very good. He said, when you go to the people and you talk to them and they're not willing to follow you, it does not mean rejection. It is very important for all of you to understand. He said, it does not mean rejection. Yeah, this is the slide. It means anarchy. It means they don't trust you. They don't trust your solution. They don't trust it will work. So how to interpret this? You don't interpret it that they don't have money. So you throw in money. It means they don't trust you. So how do you deal with low level of trust? He said, identify the early adapters. Because there's anarchy, there are so many views, there will definitely be some people who will believe you, who will agree with your vision. Start with them. And once they show success, then others will not want to stay behind. That is our psyche. We don't want to take risk, but when we see the benefit, we don't want to stay behind. So you have to understand that twist. So unless you have this insight, you can't effectively work in low-income communities. So he told them, this is the first component of building trust. So he got some early adopters. In one lane, a person came, or a group of people came, they said, we want to start. They got the idea. Now, there are some very delicate, important principles I'm going to tell you. Which he said, as a support organization or donor or NGO or development professionals never take money from the people because they needed money to lay the sewage line, their contribution. But he said, you don't take their contribution from them. Because for the rest of the life, some people from them will be saying that you embezzled the money. You took away money from them and put it in your pocket. Whatever argument you give, it doesn't matter. It will do the damage. So don't take money from them if you want to keep trust. So that gives them the trust that they are not here to exploit us. They want to help us. Tell them that you come to us with a formal application that you want our help in laying the sewage line. We'll give you the map, we'll give you the level survey. We will also train the mason who will lay the line. But what is your job? You collect money from all the households in the land yourself. You, by consensus, select one lane manager, not elect. There should be no competition, because the day you hold elections, it will create two groups who will be continuously fighting with one another. So by consensus, select one person who you think is trustworthy, honest, accessible, and that person should collect the money from all the households. We'll give you the estimates. How much? But you go to the market, we'll give you the specification, what should be the diameter of the pipeline, what type of pipeline you need, how much cement, how much other material you need. We'll give you all that. You go to the market and purchase it yourself. You collect the money, it is your money, you purchase. We train you in technical oversight, you also carry out technical oversight. So that way, it builds trust within the community and between the community and NGO. And trust is the most important thing in participatory development. So you keep accounts, you collect money, you purchase, you carry technical oversight. Because if they don't do the technical oversight and something happens tomorrow, they will come and accuse you. They will be out your office raising slogans that you did a defective job, you swindled us, you took our money, now you come and repair it. Because what happens is, in many low-income communities where civic responsibility is also at a low level, people throw their solid waste in the manholes. And when it gets blocked, they call the municipal government or the NGO, come and clean it. But if they do it themselves, each and everything, they will not even a leaf of tree fall in that manhole, because they know they have to take responsibility. So these were the principles. Once it happened in the first lane, then people got message and it went to 7,000 lanes. But the most important element here is, one is trusting the people. Second is building trust with them and knowing how to build trust. And the most important thing is patience. We have plenty of money and we have shortage of patience as development professionals. It's a very scarce commodity, because most of the development agencies, they hire world-class professionals who don't have more than 1 week. In 1 week, this cannot happen. It happened over several years. But there was a person like Akhtar Hamid Khan of world-class standing who was willing to live with the poor in that settlement. And his entire team, they established their office in that area and they were available there and accessible to the people. So this is the approach followed in urban areas, dealing with psychological barrier, telling people that you take the responsibility and be patient and wait for them. Don't take their unwillingness as shortage of money. or they're being destitute. Dealing with the social barrier, dealing with the technical barrier. Technical barrier, one of the technical barrier, let me come to this to explain this further, was that they had the same specification for the pipelines in poor areas, which they had for the high income areas. The high income areas, the consumption level is very high, even consumption of water. They will wash their cars, everyone will take shower every day. They generously use water, especially if it is coming from government on flat rates. Poor, their level of consumption is low, so their specification needs to be different. So there comes another barrier from government side. Their specifications are the same, identical for high income and low income areas, and they're written in the blue book. So any engineer who is designing a government scheme cannot deviate from them. And the rates are also fixed, they are given in the book. So you don't have the flexibility, go and haggle with the vendors in the market and get the best prices for them. So because of this inflexibility, government agencies, again, they fail too. Now there's another issue. The financial barrier, Akhtar Hamid Khan, working with the poor, not only helped them cross the financial barrier, they actually helped the government also cross the financial barrier. Very interesting way. The approach they introduced here, they called it component sharing approach. Usually when you hear of community participation, universally, people who agree on participatory development, they will talk of cost sharing approach. That if you want to engage people, if you want to have the ownership, ask them to contribute to the cost. Akhtar Hamid Khan said, no, we talk of component sharing, not cost sharing. I will take a pause if any one of you wants to ask anything about whatever I have said up to now. Otherwise, I will continue because some of these ideas might be very new for you. So it is important not to rush.
Eddie raised
Yes.
hand. Yeah, go ahead.
Hi. I just have one question. You said at the beginning that to apply the program, we need to fill two conditions. So one was that the people should be willing to organize. And I was wondering if you could repeat the second one because I didn't.
First one was that they should want to alleviate poverty.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. First, they need to agree that they want to alleviate poverty.
Thank you.
On a lighter side, why it is important, I've heard the story of a school teacher who told the students that you should help the poor. So next day, 3-4 students, they came very late to the class. The teacher asked them, why did you come so late? He said, you told us yesterday to help the poor and disabled and needy. So he said, what happened? What were you doing? What took you so long? He said that we were trying to help a blind man cross the road. So he said, why did it take so long? He said, we wanted him to cross the road. He didn't want to cross the road. So it is important to know whether it's the priority of that community or not, or that person or not. And then first you have to make sure that they want it. And then you ask your help if they're willing to receive your help. And then you tell them what Akhtar Hamid Khan used to use the word, terms of partnership, that we will help you if you are willing to help yourself. And we will bring in technical guidance like map and level survey in their case, and training of the mason, and training in technical oversight, and giving them the specifications. So this is their contribution. This is called technical guidance. We will bring in technical guidance and also social guidance to build the level of trust. The rest of it has to be done by you. And this dealing with, psychological barrier, there is one important principle. Please, all of you, note it. And you can try it whenever you get the opportunity to go to the field. This is called the principle of self-selection. Let the people decide themselves if they want to alleviate poverty or not. You don't decide. And let them decide how to overcome poverty. You don't decide. And let them decide how to go about it. You just guide, you just provide those resources which they don't have. Technical and financial solutions. So I'm coming back to component sharing. Kazu, you are the time monitor. You can stop me whenever you want. But I think, let me finish this and then I will go to one more thing, which is diagnostic dialogue, which is used in the rural areas. So after we finish these two cases, then we can open the floor for more questions. So this component sharing, the difference is you go to a community and you tell them, you decide yourself that this is how it will cost, how much it will cost, 5,000 rupees per lane. So government is willing to help you. We contribute 4,000 rupees, or we contribute 80%, and you contribute 20%. This is cost sharing. So what happens in most of the cases is, because you have not properly engaged with the community, you have not made them partner, you have not made them owner of what is being done, a contractor comes in the name of an NGO, contractor inflates the cost of delivery, and then goes to the government to collect the money, and out of that inflated cost, whatever they have saved, they showed it as the contribution of the community. So they, in the name of community engagement, they do everything without community engagement. And once the project is finished, the project is dead. No one is willing to operate and maintain the program. They don't take any interest. And so because of the mismanagement, these schemes, they are abundant. Like in Pakistan, we have 4,000 abundant water supply schemes built in the name of the poor with the loan from Asian Development Bank. And it adds to the burden of the poor because this loan has to be paid with taxes. And taxes are regressive taxes. 60% is indirect taxes, which has crushing burden on the back of the poor. Rich pay less, and so on the one hand, they have abundant schemes, and on the other hand, they have to pay for the failure of the agency also. So that's very important. But in component sharing, it's very neat and it's very powerful. He said component sharing means that there is one component of development which is called internal. Whatever is done at the lane level and household level and neighborhood level, that is internal development. So community takes the responsibility of collecting the money, purchasing the material, doing technical oversight of laying the sewage line at the lane level and connecting it with the other lane. And government takes the responsibility when all these lines are laid to connect them with the government's trunk line, which carries the collective waste of the whole town to the disposal point. So, and this approach was used then for solid waste management for other areas. So it's very simple. Government doesn't take away, collect the money from the poor. And in the name of cost sharing, no one pays a trick of collecting money from the government and then showing it in the name of the poor without their ownership. So component sharing is that way. It is very important, very effective, very sound, and very thorough. So we started this component sharing approach. The other advantage of this was because the work at community level was not done through a contractor. and the cost was borne by the communities themselves. It reduced government's cost by 70%. So those areas which government thought it could not cover within the existing budget now could be covered, because amount of the budget needed for that was reduced. So it dealt with public policy failure that way also. So that is one case study, one example from the urban areas. Now I will go to the rural area. Aga Khan Rural Support Program, I told you that they doubled the income of all those households in 10 years. How it happened? The approach they used there was, it is called diagnostic dialogue, to use the term. Diagnostic dialogue means that unlike traditional professionals, you don't go with your questionnaire and filling out questionnaires at every household and then coming home and tabulating the data and drawing conclusion and basis of that, doing that. So instead of that kind of diagnostic survey, whether you either count the calories consumed by every household or you count the level of income if it is below $2, and it is not always clear whether the method is effective or not, they did not do any of those things, any of those professional, laborious, highly sort of glorified diagnostic surveys. They called it diagnostic dialogue. Because if people are not literate, why not to have dialogue with them? And the method was simple. Diagnostic dialogue consisted of 3 dialogues. First dialogue, second dialogue, and third dialogue. For the first dialogue, Aga Khan Rural Support Program hired a social organizer to say cover between 20 to 30 villages. Social organizer will go and talk to the community, individually, in groups, and start asking them if they're interested in doing something for poverty alleviation. And if we found enough interest, then they will organize the first dialogue. It was a dialogue between the management team of Aga Khan Rural Support Program and the community. And management team would have not only a general manager, but also the technical expert, engineers, horticulture specialist, livestock specialist, microfinance specialist, monitoring evaluation specialist. The entire team will go there. In the first dialogue, they will ask them, they will not check whether they're above or below poverty line. They will trust them. This will ask them, are you interested in alleviating poverty in your areas? Because instead of asking each household or each participant, are you poor? Or you want to rise above poverty line, you don't put them on spot. People, even if they're poor, they don't want to accept that they're poor publicly. So there is a sense of dignity. You don't put them on spot. You ask the community as a whole, are you interested in alleviating poverty in your area? You respect them, their dignity is important. And they say yes. So many times people fear that if you have open meetings and you allow everyone, because you don't want to antagonize the elite, don't want to give them the impression that you are here to create a union of the people against the rich people. So you open the meeting to them also. Then it creates a fear that it might be hijacked by them. So this diagnostic dialogue will tell you how to deal with all these issues. It is very interesting and important. So they will gather there and they will ask them, you want to alleviate poverty? And they said yes. If they agree, most of them, that they want to alleviate poverty, Aga Khan Rural Support Program will tell them that it is not a handout or a freebie. It is a partnership between you and us. You have to meet certain conditions, and then we will meet certain conditions. There will be reciprocity. We are equal level partners. you have to first fulfill certain conditions. If you fulfill those conditions, then we will do our part in the second dialogue. So what are those conditions? First condition is, as I responded to Ellie earlier, that you should be willing to organize. Are you willing to organize to alleviate poverty? If you are willing to organize, we will help you. Second, and these three conditions, all over South Asia, they created miracles. First of all, ask the community, are they willing to organize? Because this is their sort of contribution to the program. Secondly, are they willing to save? And this is very important to help them cross their psychological barrier that we are poor. And in the beginning, they will say, oh no, it is so difficult. We are poorest of the poor. How come you are asking us to save? And the program will say that even, you have hens which lay eggs. If you save 2 eggs a week or 8 eggs and sell them in the market, and whatever your money say, even that will be accepted. There is no lower limit, but you have to save. Everyone has to save. If you want to become member of the village organization, you will have to save. So that was the second condition. Now, the collective savings of these poor organizations run into hundreds of millions of dollars. So that psychological barrier, that sense that we are poor, we are helpless, it is very, very important to overcome that. And most of us as development professionals also carry that feeling that we can't do anything with hundreds of millions of dollars. So that second was saving. And the third was learning skills. That if you want to develop, if the area is going to prosper, progress in the future, you will have to learn new skills of sowing new crops, raising new variety of livestock, new types of crops, new types of management, all those new things you will need to learn in the course of work. If you agree on these things, then we are willing to help you. But agreement doesn't mean you say verbally. In 3 months' time, you will have to save. Each of you will be given a passbook where your saving will be recorded. We will open a bank account in your name of the organization, and it will be on record. And whether you have created an organization, you will keep their minutes. So you will again have evidence that you have created an organization, you are meeting, you are discussing issues on poverty alleviation. And the most important thing, I want all of you to pay attention to this, because we believe in set models of democracy and participation, and we make judgments based on that, but it is important. This is very important insight. They said when you pick the office bearers, you pick a president who commands influence over the community, who is trustworthy, and you also need a relatively young man who is literate, who can keep accounts, who can keep minutes. So you have a president and you have a secretary. But there will be no elections, because elections lay the ground for feuds in the community, which then stay there forever. And they are all in conflict with one another, and it lays the ground for breaking full-scale participation of the community. So it will be done by consensus, and only elect those people whom you can go and grab by their collar tomorrow. Don't come to us that a check was given to the president of the organization, he ran away with this. It is your responsibility to go and catch. One. Second is, if there are any disputes in the community, we will not help on any point where you have disputes. You have to resolve the disputes yourself. We will not be there as patron or godfather. you have to amicably resolve the dispute between yourselves within the community. You will select your office bearers, you will save, and you will meet regularly. And there'll be an evidence in the form of record of a social organizer visit. Once these conditions are met, then we can come and talk to you. So this they did with 100,000 communities, scattered over this mountain region in very inaccessible areas. So once this was met, these conditions were met, then general manager and his team will visit for the second dialogue. Second dialogue is also very interesting. In the first dialogue, they agreed on the reciprocity and the conditions which have to be met by both the parties. Now, second is very, very interesting. In the second dialogue, they asked them that tell us one single most important thing. If that is done, it will alleviate the poverty of majority of the households. I have forgotten one thing. Sorry for that. I will come back to that after I finish the third dialogue about gender issues, which is important for all of us. How did they deal with that? So anyways, so they will go and ask the villagers, okay, tell us one important intervention which will alleviate the poverty of the most of the households. So I want you to, without my knowledge, write down on the page which you have in your hand, what you think, what is your guess, would be their priority. You will be amazed to know that none of these communities mention either opening a school or health center as one single intervention which will lead to alleviation of poverty. We almost invariably think that these are the interventions which are needed. They are important, and in the long term, they do contribute. Most of these mountain communities, majority of them, almost I think 95%, they said constructing a water channel was one single intervention which will alleviate their poverty. Because they had uncultivated land, sizable uncultivated land in every village, and there were water streams passing near the village, but these were, hard rocks, high mountains. How could you dig a water channel and bring the water to their farmlands in the village? That was the single most important intervention, where they needed a technical guidance from an engineer. They needed to be trained in use of explosives, in deciding the slope, and sort of building the whole channel. And by building these water channels, constructing these water channels, they doubled the amount of land under irrigation in 10 years. That is very simple, calculation of doubling the income, because it doubled the area under irrigation. It doubled the crop harvested. It doubled the income. You don't need very detailed house-to-house survey where you have 16 indicators. You simply, and it was evaluated by the World Bank team, who were not donors of this program, an external party 3 times. And when they did their first evaluation after 4 years, they were amazed. And they said, these 4 years are missed 4 years for the rest of the world, because they need to know this approach. So this, in the second dialogue, they identified the intervention, and then the engineers team, or technical assistant, they will come with the feasibility during the dialogue, presented to the villagers. Once they agreed, then second dialogue was completed. They will also discuss the cost. And villagers sometimes had a better idea what should be the route, what should be the terrain of the water channel. So where should it start, where should it end? They had better insights. So second dialogue would culminate at production of a technical feasibility, which was agreed by in the community meeting, accepted by them, the technical solution. Because they had to provide labor, but this was not unpaid labor. Because if you ask for unpaid labor for digging a water channel, then some people will benefit on the cost of others, those who don't. So they said whoever comes, they will be paid, but every household will at least nominate one person, so that there is no free rider thing over here. All the people contribute labor, all of them, they receive payment for their labor. So that is user market. And in the third dialogue, once the feasibility, technical and financial feasibility had been agreed upon between the technical team and the community, then a check will be handed over to the president of the organization in the village meeting, that this check is for building this water channel, for buying equipment, for buying explosives, for paying the wages. And then the muster roll will be kept by the village organization, how much was paid to whom. And these accounts will be transparent, open for inspection for the community, and everyone will have the right to ask any questions. So in the third dialogue, a formal terms of partnership was signed between the community and Aga Khan Rural Support Program, and the program was handed over to the community. And this resulted in 10 years to double the amount of land, irrigable land in the northern areas. So these are the two cases which can best explain to you. And there are so many others. I told Kazu that one interesting thing was, I have to say two more things, Kazu, then I will finish. We can open the floor for questions. One is that Shoaib Sultan Khan, who was the general manager of the program, he had a very, very distinctive habit. I've not heard of this anywhere else. He used to write a note for record for every community meeting he held. And for every meeting he had held with the government, for every meeting he held with the donors. So for the first 10 years, there is a record available of each and every meeting. And in those meetings, he also said, I went there, we had this much investment, it has produced this much in terms of asset and income for the community. So he handed it to me, those 10 years notes. I read all of them. I highlighted important portions, and I wrote some footnotes to explain things which are not sort of said there, unsaid. And now it is in the form of a book, Social Transformation in Pakistan, the Art and Science of Linking with Other. And he fell in love with that annotated volume. And this book will be uploaded on Amazon very soon in October. And the book will be launched at Trent University on 21st of October. We'll send you an invitation through Professor Kazu. And any of you who want to attend, they are most welcome to attend the book launch. I have kept a very low price for the book, just $20. So any one of you who is interested in reading those real life stories day to day of 10 years, it is a remarkable resource for any of you who want to pursue the development career in the future. So that is one point. But the second important point was about gender, because throughout this talk, I've not talked about gender. They are part of this. And it was raised by many, especially the donors and outsiders. So what is gender participation? Where do women come in? Why don't you invite women to the meetings? So AKISP's answer was that we will create separate organization for women. We will let them organize and be part of this. But one, men and women generally in life, they are segregated. So if you artificially bring this in, they will sit there and then they will be dominated by men. They will not even let them speak. So if they have a separate organization, they will speak more openly, they will be free, they will describe their own priorities, they will develop their own program, they will do their own thing. And once they have a leadership, once they gain experience, once they start doing all these things, then we leave it up to them in the future, whether they want to merge with general men's organization, they want to keep separate identity. In India, when the program was introduced, then it was a microcredit program and microcredit only for women. And this was called local self-help groups. So it graduated from that separate to solely for the women. And they were the entrepreneurs, they were the recipient of credit, and they were the managers. So due to the specific or different socio-economic context, the engagement and participation was done in a different way. I will end here. And so if there are any questions, I'm there to answer those.
Thank you so much, Professor Bachiu, for your very insightful lot of stories. I believe you can tell us. But yeah, so I just want to clarify that the Professor Fayaz provided slides, and so I will also share the slides. Is that okay with you that share the slides?
Yeah, please share with them. They're public property, so.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And yeah, there are a number of, I think, issues that Professor Bachiu provided, and a number of the terms that are probably many of us are not necessarily familiar. For example, participatory development. He talks a lot about, the kind of philosophical, I guess, that the part of the development practice, particularly inclusivity, right? And listening to local community. He talks about 4 barriers experienced by local poor, but also that he talked about the diagnostic dialogue. I think dialogue part also very important. So yeah, I think it's so many important issues are discussed, but I think that what is really powerful here is that he Professor Bachiu respects agency of local community. I think it's really, we tend to neglect, we tend to focus on, technological advance, support, sort of assistance part, but not necessarily respect, agency of local community. I think it's really his talk today speaking about philosophical, I guess, aspect of practice, and I really appreciate it. So it's almost a time, but if you have question, you can raise your hand so that you can, if you want to clarify. I think I received question about trust regarding why it takes so long to build trust. If you show the poor that building the sewage system, for example, more affordable than the living with dirty water. So the student question is that why, you talked a lot about, right, community trust, and why it takes long time to.
Yeah, it takes a long time because it's very, very interesting, because these are not homogeneous communities. People from, like, if you look at informal settlements, most of these settlements have been formed due to rural-urban migration. Last 60, 70 years after independence in most of the colonies, Akhtar Hamid Khan used to say a very interesting thing. He said, if development doesn't go to the poor, poor will come to development. So if the jobs and income opportunities don't go to the poor and rural areas, they will go from rural areas to urban areas. So when they come to urban areas, they come from so many different backgrounds. They have not been living there for generations. And there is a certain mobility also, because they are informal jobs or temporary jobs. There are no permanent jobs. So they keep moving. So these are not homogeneous communities. In rural areas, there are more homogeneous communities. But in urban areas, they're not homogeneous. But even in rural areas, people don't trust the outsiders. It takes time. And within themselves also, building trust is not easy, because mostly it is patron-client relationship. These traditionally, they are led by the elites, local chiefs. Local chiefs have no interest in poverty alleviation. If at all they come, their interest is in hijacking the program and pocketing the money. But these programs don't become interesting for them, because if there's not so much donor money, generous money, and you have to donate and work, then they lose interest. So without annoying them and offending them, you create disinterest for them in this. But when you create disinterest for them, then it takes time between the communities also to start having trust in someone who is going to lead them. And there's so many things that need to be done. They need to agree on their priority. They need to agree who should be their leader. They need to agree what should be a technical solution. They need to agree what is the most affordable financial solution, feasible. So all these things take time. And unlike our thinking, we lump poor in one category. But poor like us, they are free individuals. They have their own background, experience, interests, rationality. So that is why it takes time. If it has to be done by a contractor, it will not take any time. If it has to be done by the government, it will not take time. But it will be more expensive and less rewarding.
Thank you. Do you have other students? Do you have question? We're almost running the time, but if you have question, cigarette. So yeah.
Want, you can share my email with them. They can send me any question in writing.
Yeah, and I have one question I got from through the chat. Students said that the gender segregation you talked about, right? The women's issue, and is a solution to gender inequality in the community meeting. But in that sense, does it happen the inequality instead of approaching a joint community conversation? It separates the needs of women versus men, women and men. So I think that her question about gender segregation is a solution to gender inequality in the community meeting. So maybe you can elaborate a little bit more about the women's, I think, gender equality. And I think the question is that a segregation would actually deepen the inequality. I guess that the question, but you talked about microfinance, right? And the gender, female empowerment, that I think is the popular term. But I think the student question about the gender,
No, I think it is very important. The thing is, if you are living in a society where there is segregation between men and women, and it also means in this segregation, women's only domain is domain of their household, four walls of the household. Men do everything outside. Even if you bring them in a joint meeting, they will have little experience of the outside world. at that stage. And since it is a hierarchical system, men who are used to call the shots and dominate and dictate their terms, they can easily dominate the meeting. You don't want to create a situation where they take advantage of their traditional power. It does not mean that you want to end segregation, but that is a separate agenda. It should be done separately. For example, in the social sector, when you invest in education and women get education and they come to public life, the situation completely changes. Like in Pakistan now, in the universities, 60% of the students are females. But that is mostly in urban areas. So when that in social sector, that thing changes, they come to public life, then they can come to those meetings and sit there also. But in the beginning, at the starting point, if you start working on ending the segregation, then you cannot do development work for both of them. So the best way is to create two streams. They have complete freedom and power to decide whatever they want. Ending segregation might be important in certain contexts, and it might have different level of priority in different societies, but it is something separate which should be dealt with separately. It doesn't mean undermining the interests of women and undermining their participation and not addressing their priorities. But I think you should read the, at some point, the notes on women organization. Some of them might be mentioned in the book that is coming up. This issue comes again and again, and it has been addressed, and communities have had dialogue with them. But this is my answer. It might not be satisfying to some of you. I hope you get the opportunity to go to those areas yourself some point in the future and dig it deeper. But this is my understanding that it worked very well for them.
Thank you. I think gender issue is really important. You talked about 4 barriers, right? Psychological, social, financial, technical barriers. But I think the gender, right, patterns of vulnerability, barriers, risks, I think those are increasingly important. And I think it's intersect with what you have mentioned, you have discussed in the lecture. But it's unfortunately, I have to close the lecture because of the time constraint. But thank you so much for really a very inspiring lecture today. And all the lecture Q&As are recorded. So you can revisit.
With me and I will send you my.
Yes. Right. So I'll also share this slides. So thank you so much, Professor Bachu, and really appreciate it taking the time, coming to the lecture. And we look forward actually your book launch on the October 27th, right? So I will share.
Of October, I will share the link with you. Whosoever is interested, they can attend.
Yeah. October 27th. And
I'm still be speaking there, the person who did this in Northern area.
So we really look forward. Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, so I'll end the lecture today, but thank you so much, Professor. Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.